executive director. I have lived in the Bay Area for 35 years, 10 years at Apple, and 25 years at IBM. The last 3 years I've been retired. But 1 day a week, Wednesdays, I volunteer for nonprofits, and most of my work there is mentoring students on something called service science, service innovation, but also artificial intelligence. If you want to take a picture of this screen, the slides are already posted to slideshow.net/Spohrer, and I encourage you to use them freely. You don't have to tell me you're using them. Take them, steal them, use them, modify them. Also, I should put it in the chat. Let's see if I can do that. I like to do a rehearsal timing recording of my talk. So there's actually a recording of me already out here on YouTube of me giving this talk. And I'm probably not going to show as many of the videos in this talk because I don't want that feedback to distract from the main points of the talk, which I'm sure you'll all get from just the talk itself. So as I was preparing this talk today, I was also, these thoughts kept coming through my head from this book I'm reading. Have any of you read Samuel Arbesman's The Magic of Code? He's a pretty fine author. He's written The Half-Life Facts, Complexity, about the world becoming more complex. This last book, I think, is his masterpiece. I've liked all his books, but The Magic of Code, in chapter 8, Tools for Thought, he says, too often technology is at odds with humanity. And he gives a couple examples. Most people have heard of the quarterly example, but forget that. I really think this chapter, in many ways, made me think about we have, by and large, adapted ourselves to technology in ways that are not good for us. We are so adaptive as a species. We can adapt to these technologies in ways that it's not good for us. And then the next sentence is, our increased drive for optimization of work can run directly counter to our ability to think deeply or even feel that human. And I don't know what it was about this. It just hit me harder than it has. I mean, I've been in this field for decades, but he's a beautiful writer and there's a lot more to the book. But this was going through my mind as I was preparing this talk today, because I'm kind of a techno-optimist type person. I think everything's going to work out in the end, even if, you know, there's fires burning here and there. I think it's all going to be good. But for some reason today, I was especially sensitive. So for what that's worth, I do, you know, enjoy being here. I enjoy sharing my journey and building my AI digital twin. Basically, the outline of the talk is I'm going to explore some of the capabilities of AI digital twins today. The basic capability is you can build a chat bot of yourself that's pretty good, and there's platforms for doing that. You can upload all your papers and so forth. And the chatbot version of me, I think, is pretty good. And of course, it works in different languages, which is nice, and things like that. The part that we're still struggling with is getting the interacting with it in real time. You can ask it to do something, and then like in 4x real time, it'll make a video of the response, but that's not real time yet. So at least with the tools and platforms I'm using, that's kind of the state of the art. But the people I have working on this tell me we're going to get to real time real soon, in which case we'll be able to have an interactive conversation with Gen Twin. So as we explore this concept of the AI digital twin being the future of human-computer interface for all of us, I want to keep in mind that the capability is still nascent, but it's getting better and better. And I'll go through the pros and cons, the benefits and the harms, because really that's what service innovation is all about. So my main thing that I study these days is service, which we define as the application of resources for the benefit of another. And that resource can be knowledge, and usually is. So the application of resources such as knowledge for the benefit of others. I think service is pretty fundamental. And a service innovation usually starts with some increase in our capability to give and get service. So something, and usually it's technological, but it could be a skill in us. And that skill allows us to give and get service better. However, the benefits, if they're there, this new service offering, you want to scale it up to as many people as possible as rapidly as you can so that they all get the benefit. And that usually requires a new business model. So service innovation isn't just new technologies or new skills, it's new business models as well to scale it up more rapidly. However, every technology, every new capability, every new service harms someone. Period. In fact, if any of you can think of a technology that's never caused harm, I'll give you $100. I'm usually talking to students and the students go, a button. And I say, what about the trucking sensor? Or they'll think, knowledge doesn't, I guess knowledge does from people. So there is one answer, and there's one of the books here on this page. Actually, Ted Salter gave me this book to read, Geek Heresy. It's by Kentaro Toyama, a fabulous book. And in there, I think there is one solution to this problem of something that has caused no harm. But I'll leave that as an exercise to the audience. Now, the homework, which some of you did, I imagine, because usually in a class, some of the people do the homework, was to look at the knowledge navigator. And I hope as you looked at that knowledge navigator, you saw the guy in the bow tie, and some of you were thinking, why would I have an assistant that's some guy in a bow tie, or why wouldn't the assistant be me? Right? Because it's the assistant is an AI. And this assistant's got to know my schedule. It's got to know all kinds of stuff about me. It's me. It's not an assistant, it's me. It's a digital version of me. And the other thing that's weird about this knowledge navigator video is the Jill part. Remember, the assistant goes out to call Jill. Jill's not available. But then seriously, like 30 seconds later, Jill is calling back. I don't know about you, but my colleagues are pretty busy. And usually when I call them, I don't get an immediate call back. Once in a while I do. And furthermore, Jill says, oh, I can be at your, I can be a lecturer for your class at 4 o'clock in 2 hours. Come on. That's totally unrealistic. But now imagine Jill Twin. Jill Twin is your friend. Any question I want to ask Jill, my Jill Twin will answer right away, real time. No waiting. Jill Twin can show up at my class and get part of the lecture. These are the advantages of all of us having an AI digital twin. And I wish the knowledge navigator had shown that, then I would have even greater praise for what was an amazing Apple video. Now, what is an AI digital twin? So I think many of you probably know Reid Hoffman. He's the founder of LinkedIn. And a pretty good, there's good billionaires. He's one of them. He's a good billionaire. And he wanted to experiment with this new capability. And I would love to show you the video. I'm not going to because it'll be too much chaos, sound chaos. But I have the link right there at the bottom, so you can go out and test it, or you can watch my recording that has all the recordings played. And it's pretty amazing. But imagine a mimic version of you. And I struggled for a long time of what's the right modifier there. So I put it in quotes, mimic, because the technology, it's like a really, really good actor who studied you and can pretend to be you, but it's not you. And there's mistakes, and we'll get into some of the problems of it. But it's a mimic version of you. The beauty of it is I have to sleep. This mimic version of me available 24/7. I speak a few languages. English, okay. French, poorly. Italian, poorly. But guess what? Jim Twin. He speaks parler le français très bien, and Japanese, which I hardly speak, and Chinese. So your twin can not only be available 24/7, but it can speak all these languages. And I've uploaded all my publications into my twin. So it can summarize my publications and give talks on them. And it can even, I think, even with current AI capabilities, it can tune to audiences better than I can. That's pretty amazing. You know, and this is why you would want, oh, sorry, Edwin.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt, but how
Want me
do
to
you
try
want
it?
us to time questions? Do you want to hold questions until the end or address them as they come up?
I can take them as a comeback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Do we have a question?
we do have a question.
Sorry.
It's barring quantum entanglement, how does the info that your digital you learns get back here?
Oh, great question. I've got slides on that, so I'm gonna defer my answer, but one of the big problems with the twin is keeping it up to date. You know, the divergence problem, because we all change faster than we can possibly know. And so keeping your twin up to date is a real problem. That's why I focus on my publications. They don't change that much. You know, I maybe write 2 or 3 papers a day at most. I probably get 15 talks. Those can easily be uploaded. So I can keep my twin kind of in sync, but there's some deeper issues in that question I want to get to, and I've got a slide on later. So please watch this on your own, Reads AI, because it is hilarious. He built his digital twin basically to challenge himself. So he interviews the twin to see how good it is, but then he asks the twin to interview him. And it's hilarious, and it's good. He's got a really good twin. And what I like about it is at the beginning, he says, okay, you've ingested all my books and talks, so I want you to summarize in 1 sentence to the smartest person in the world, this latest publication, and it's fantastic. And then summarize it to a kid in grade school, fantastic summary. Summarize it in Klingon. I don't know, it seemed good, you know, it sounded like the Star Trek episodes, but I can speak Klingon. And then the last was, as Jerry on Seinfeld would explain it to Elaine, and that was hilarious. So for that joke alone, you definitely want to go out and check on Reed's twin. So he did this about a year ago. Who else has these digital twins? Well, we're not very far from San Jose State University. It's just down the road, and the president there has her AI avatar. And again, I won't play this because I don't want to hear the sounds, but it's fantastic to watch this because you can see this person who's saying, we've got to expand our reach, we've got to enhance our communication. And then I'm remembering that communication and deep thinking kind of stuff from Sam Arbusman's book. How is this going to help us think more deeply? How is this going to help us communicate better? Yes, availability, yes, languages, but what's really, how are we going to do that? And so we'll get to that. So here's the Jim Twin adventure so far. So Scott Zimmer is the CEO of the TMPT.app platform. That is a platform where you can upload your publications. They even give you, or they gave me, I don't know, maybe I'm special, I don't know. They gave me a little agent to invite to all my meetings. I didn't invite it to this one, I could have, but it will take all the meetings that I'm part of with my student teams, and that gets uploaded. I always ask my student teams, is it okay? They always say yes, so that gets uploaded. And I give a lot of mentoring advice, like, oh, it's so hard to get a job these days, Jim. What do you recommend? So all that stuff is hoovered up into my platform. And they just came up with this answers from me / Jim Twin. So that's how you can go out there right now. Actually, let's go do that because that's not a recording, so we won't get any sounds. So let's go out and do that. I'll click here. And that's what it looks like when you get there. And then you can start a chat. And earlier today, I asked a question of myself. And the question was, What should Jim Spohrer be sure to tell the Beihai audience about Jim Twin, AI digital twin in this talk tonight? Jim Spohrer should highlight several key aspects of Jim Twin, AI digital twin in his talk to the Beihai audience. First, he should explain the concept of an AI digital twin and how it serves as a digital representation of a person capable of delivering talks and interacting in multiple languages. This can be particularly beneficial for CEOs and research leaders who wish to extend their reach and communicate their messages globally. Jim should also discuss the potential applications of AI digital twins in various sectors, such as education, business, and research. We'll get to that. Emphasizing how they can enhance productivity and accessibility. Additionally, he should address the technological advancements that make AI digital twins possible, such as advances in AI, machine learning, and natural language processing. I only have a little bit of time in this talk today, so I'm going to give you some pointers for that stuff, but there's some really cool stuff there. So it's important for Jim to also touch on the ethical considerations and privacy concerns associated with creating and using digital twins, ensuring the audience understands the importance of responsible data handling. Finally, Jim should share his personal experiences and insights gained from developing and using Jim Twin, providing a real world perspective on the benefits and challenges of this innovative technology. If I knew I had a little bit more time, I would invite a question from the audience that you should ask, but you can just go out there and use it yourself anytime you want, 24/7. And if you ask your questions in Chinese, the answers come back in Chinese. I get an email message every time somebody asks my question, so I can check it and it's translated into English so I can understand it. And then if I correct anything, the person that asks the question gets an email, so you have to share your email address so you can get the correct answer. Jim Maria says, no, we're going to point you work. Well, typically what I do is I keep the original twin answer and I just push it down and say original twin answer. And then I say, the original twin answer wasn't very good because of this or this or this, but it's interesting. It's a historical note that it generated this, because I like that kind of data. So anyway, let's go back to the presentation. So the avatar version of me, I really wish I could show you, because I remember when the students at San Jose State University were creating it for me on the HeyGen platform, they said, we need 2 minutes of you giving a video. We need one of your talks that we're going to run through Claude so it can be summarized, and then we'll have it, you giving the talk. And my wife, she saw it. She saw my twin. I said, hey, I got something cool to show you, Diane. And she goes, that's not you? I go, no, that's AI generated. That's all AI generated. It sounds smarter than you. But a little emotionally blunted. But so you see it and you go, oh my gosh, it sings more smoothly and articulately and uses a better vocabulary than Jim Reel sometimes. But then what I really want to show you is the second YouTube one is French. Now, je parle français un petit peu. Oh my gosh, Jim Twin is beautiful, friend. Madame de Messieurs. It's just like, whoa, he's confident too. I like that. But I did have a friend of mine, an ex-IBM guy in France, who he saw the twin and he says, oh, we've got a big event coming up. It's the parents and the kids at a science fair. This will be cool. You can zoom in and show your twin. And I said, okay. So Jim Twin French is on stage. And it's speaking in French, because a lot of the people speak French. And at the end, Jim Reel comes on, and then I had to do the translation, because I wanted to be comfortable. But the first question they asked me, the French audience, has Jim Twin ever given an answer that has surprised you? And I said, no, not yet, but I expect that will happen. There will come a day where Jim Twin will generate a response that'll go, that's surprising. I might have thought of that one day, but I hadn't yet. So I think that's kind of the fun that Reid Hoffman was getting at with his twins. Like, why have this assistant who looks like a guy with a bow tie or any? No, you want it to be kind of like you, so you can start saying, who am I? Is that me? You know, and you can start like looking at yourself slightly differently than maybe you would otherwise. So to me, that fun aspect of having a twin is going to be really, really important. Now, you may want a twin. And you may not want to go to the HeyGen platform. You may not want to go to the 10th platform. So I have a high school student, Arne Badsha, who's a genius at open source programming. He is building on GitHub Gym Twin open source. And any of you who want to clone his GitHub repo and have your own twin, we're working on it. And it's not real time yet. And he's so committed. He just got accepted. He just graduated high school. He got accepted at UC Santa Barbara, computer science. And he started the AI club at his high school. This is a really good kid. And so hopefully there'll be an interactive, real-time gym twin coming from Arne. But that's been my adventure so far. Now, the question you've all been waiting for, that I've been waiting for. And think about this, because I'm gonna, don't rush into your answer. Do you want a digital twin of yourself? No, yes, not sure. And if you watch that video of me in speak French, watch it in French, English. It's a summary of one of my articles I wrote about digital twins where, absolutely not, yes, I do, maybe, only with my permission. So there's some information in those videos if you want to watch it. But I definitely say yes, because these are just some of the papers that I've been asked in the last year for talks to different student groups or different groups. And I said yes to them all, but some of them were hard and some of them were in different languages. And I wish I could have sent Jim Twin to get the talk and just shown up for the Q&A at the end. In fact, this talk, we'll get into that in a minute. This talk could be much better once Jim Twin is good enough. Because Jim Twin can, all the people who registered, Jim Twin could start thinking about, okay, what is the communication I want to do to oh, John's going to be there. Your old buddy from IBM. Oh, he's done this recently. You should have something in there about the twin that'll appeal to John. Stuff like that. Come on, I got bounded rationality. But Jim Twin, as the marginal cost of computing goes to zero, would be able to customize a fantastic talk. The other thing while you're thinking, and then I'm going to take a vote, raise your hand. I recently heard a talk by Alan Kay, one of my mentors at Apple. Very lucky to have Alan Kay as one of my mentors. And he gave what might have been, I don't know, I know it was a really interesting talk where he said, what I'm doing right now, and so what Jim Reel is doing right now, is so darn primitive. We could be sitting around a campfire. I'm just sharing stories. We're sitting around a campfire, I'm sharing stories, limited distribution, maybe with the web, it's a little bit bigger distribution, but how primitive. And I remember Alan, when he would come to Apple, because he lived in LA, he was always flying up in a plane, and he would be hunched over because he was carrying a backpack full of books. Alan loved to read books, and he was a fast reader, but I said, Alan, you're gonna bend your spine. And I tried to pick up his bag. This is heavy. And he says, well, I'm reading this, I'm studying this, I want to have the books handy in case I think of something. And I was like, my gosh, that's so many books. And he says, well, books are a better way of communicating than just sitting down and talking with someone. Before you sit down and talk with someone, Jim, you should always read their books. And then when you sit down and talk with them, you can have a much better conversation. So that makes a lot of sense. And then you go into the digital age, this next one right here, where we do have this ability to scale at least our storytelling. But I think it's going to be this twin that is going to be bigger than the printing press, as they say. This is going to be a kind of communication that really is going to be amazing, I think. Now, please raise your hand if no, you do not want a digital twin, ever. Keep it away from me as far as you can. Hit it with a stake. To the twin. All right. So I count 3. Yes, I want a twin. Gotta have it sooner or later. Cautiously.
I kind of have one already, but.
Oh, you have one already?
I did one on ChatGPT.
Oh, so you got a GPT. So you got a chat button.
I have John Bailey 2.0 chat version.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I'd love to try it sometime.
I'll send you.
See, we could have our twins talk. Very good. Okay, so I'm gonna say, I'm just gonna make this up because I give this part of the talk a lot. It's usually 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Unless I'm talking to a group of CEOs. And then it's 99% one. Unless I'm talking to the head of a bunch of research centers, 99% one. And mixed gender, the whole thing. It's anybody that has to give, anybody that's ever had an HR leader come up to them and say, I need you to read this to the troops today. Wants to just give that to the twin and they'll be there. They're gonna hear their twin talking, but they're gonna be doing a few messages and looking around, reaction, and then they'll be there for the questions. And you know what? I bet their employees are gonna appreciate the talk better because the twin adjusts the enthusiasm level up slightly. It's it's better. And what if you got a cold? What if you're CEO and you got a cold? Okay, HR, I'll do this. Excuse me, everyone. Important message from the top here. No, having a twin is going to be essential if you're a leader and you have massive communication to do. Now, why do I not like using AI? Why do I not like my twin? Well, too much energy. It sucks energy. AI today uses way too much energy. It's not good for the planet. And every time I use an AI, I feel guilty. Second, the errors. Oh my gosh, the errors. I typically use my twin and AI generally where I'm an expert, so I can catch the errors quickly. Little small things that I can catch errors, but the errors are all over the place. And when I give a student team an assignment and they don't know this stuff, the stuff they try to pass off that's AI generated is just full of errors. And ethics. Most of the data, most of the AI systems are built on stolen data. And that's probably the thing that I feel worse. But I actually believe all three of these have a technical solution. I know people say ethics on, that's not a technical solution. Well, there's this project at Berkeley called Sky T1, and they're trying to build an ethically sourced AI system on data that they have access to.
What's it called, Jim?
Sky T1. And I'm not going to go through this, but if any of you want to know what I think AI is good at, what it's bad at, this is the slide. So why do I care? I think HCI should be about HHI, human to human interaction. That's the future. I mean, you were talking about the ubiquitous computing guy. Eventually, technology kind of disappears and it's about us and people. And I think this is the debate that's going on that I see right now in the team science community at Stanford and these research center people. The problem is, would you rather talk to a super intelligent AI or would you rather talk to a person? Well, or the person's twin. For me, it's easy. I want to talk to the person and the person's twin. I don't want to talk to the super intelligent AI. Oh, but the super intelligent AI will do. I don't care. Most of the stuff I do, it's with teams of people, and I want to know the people I'm working with. So there's this paper out of Stanford. I'll just read this. It's the AI PI's job to figure out the other agents and expertise needed to tackle the project. Zao said, for this particular project, the PI agent created an immunology agent, a computational biology agent, a machine learning agent. And in every project, no matter the topic, there's one agent that assumes the role of critic. Its job is to poke holes, caution against common pitfalls, and provide constructive criticism of the other agents. So for me, that's nuts. If I'm working on a project, I want to know who the immunologist is. I want to know the experts because I may want to push back on some stuff they're saying. And to me, I would rather have it be human-human interaction rather than human-computer interaction. But this is a great debate. Some people would rather talk to a godlike AI rather than other people. Okay. It's a hot topic in team science. I'm not going to go through these, but they're in the thing. Now, who do I want to talk to? Who do I wish had a twin of them today? Some of them do, but they haven't given me access. these are the people I follow to keep up with advances in artificial intelligence these days. There's other groups that I follow for service science and other things I'm interested in. But I would love to have digital twins of all these people that I can interact with. I mean, once in a while, I send Stephen Wolfram a message on LinkedIn and he responds, but it's like, he's a busy guy, right? And some of these people never respond to me. And some of them respond all the time to me. But, these are the people, and some are like realistic, and some are optimistic, some are doers, some are knowers. But these are the people, and I've got hundreds of documents on my laptop. I've got their videos, I've got their books, I've got all kinds of information from them. So if I was unethical, I guess, and wanted to, I could create a twin of them that I could interact with. But I would want them to give permissions. And I do believe that Reed created the AI digital twin because sooner or later, LinkedIn is going to make an offer to everybody that has a LinkedIn profile. And I hope you connect with me on LinkedIn, by the way. I mean, if you want to connect, just send me a LinkedIn connection. I'd be happy to connect with you. But I believe you're going to get an email someday soon, and it's going to say, hey, guess what? We can create your twin. Do you want it? And students are going to go, what's the application? Simulated rehearsal job interviews for your job. Students sign up. Employers, what's the application? Interviewing employees for your projects. Sign up. There's going to be some people that may not want it, but I think a lot of people are going to go for this. There's still problems though. But this, to me, these are the people. Now, I'm going to try to wrap up really, really quickly because, oh yes, I need time for questions. But let me do these next slides pretty quickly. This is Jensen Wang, of course. He was at Stanford. He gave a talk about the H100 chip or device. It weighs 70 pounds, 35,000 parts, costs $250,000, and they can't sell them. I mean, there's too much demand. If they could make more of them, they could sell more of them. Why? He says, well, it replaces a data center, you've got to understand. Just the cable, the cost of the cables in the data center is more than $250,000. And this is why the mission of NVIDIA is to drive the marginal cost of computing to zero. But why? How do we get it to zero energy? But to me, that sets off this bell ringing. As the marginal cost of computing goes to zero, that's going to drive demand for new service offerings. And digital twins is going to be one of them. This is my version of Moore's Law. If you're ever at a party and somebody says, what's the cost of computation today? Just every 20 years, draw a vertical line and then draw your horizontal lines, trillion, billion, million, thousand, and then draw the diagonals. And that's a pretty good estimate of the cost of computation. There's a little bit of adjustment you have to do at the beginning because of a learning curve. But this is an exascale. This is the computing power of the human brain. By 2060, it should be about $1,000. And Rana scale is 1 billion, the computing power of 1 billion human brains, basically a planet scale. And it's only going to be $1 billion by 2080. So think about the number of billionaires increasing. This is the optimistic thing. This is the GDP per employee trend. If you're an entrepreneur, you should be very excited about this. Because I think that's going to be what the world shifts to is entrepreneurship. Because there's plenty of capital for lots of exploration of new digital service offerings as the marginal cost goes to zero. And a lot of them are going to be based on a platform for digital twins. So maybe LinkedIn, if they get in there, maybe GitHub. This is if you're curious about this diagram and these numbers, this is the paper that I wrote with Bill Rose in 2018. This is an important slide. I was with Don Norman in my office at IBM and Paul Maglio, and we were talking about AI. I can't remember when, maybe 2016, 2017. And we were saying, well, there'll probably be a progression from tool to assistant to collaborator to coach to mediator. Now, probably most of you know what the tool is. Some of you know what the assistant is, the bow tie guy, maybe a collaborator. Okay, that's somebody on your team, a coach, helping you get better. But what the heck is a mediator? Well, a mediator is someone who can negotiate for you on your behalf better than you can negotiate for yourself. Someone, think of who do you trust the most in the world? Some people say their parents, some people say their spouse, some people say only themselves. I say my spouse. She has a Yale law degree and she can negotiate much better than I can on anything. But think of these world models that are missing from the current generative AIs. They don't have the institutional model, the rules and stuff like this. But there's a very important thing over here that I remember Alan Kay clarifying to me at an Apple meeting. Solving intelligence augmentation requires all of this done well as a bicycle for the mind to make us stronger, not weaker, when tech is all removed. And that's very important because Steve Jobs was always saying bicycles for the mind, bicycles. And I remember saying to Alan, shouldn't we want cars for the mind? Cars go faster than bicycles. And Alan just kind of looked at me like, I'm mentoring this stuff. No. A bicycle makes you stronger for walking, a car makes you weaker. And oh yeah, I get it. So there you go. And that's where the Sam Arbesman quote kept coming back to me like, wait a minute, our objective function is wrong in these designs with technology. We're too adaptable. Our species is too adaptable. And we're making things easier when really we want the challenge to be better. And the challenge that makes us better. So there's a lot that these twins can help us figure out. Like a good twin would tell you, no, you shouldn't do that. It's like, not good for you. And here's why. And I don't know about you, if you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I shouldn't have done that. That's different from just like somebody else telling you you shouldn't do that. So there's something psychological going on by having a twin that looks like you that I think might be very powerful. So here's the wrap up. Communication problem in a nutshell. As our technological capabilities increase, we're going to be doing more and agreeing less. We already see it, the polarization. It's simple mathematics. If you're a primitive individual and you have 3 goals, food, shelter, reproduction, and you've only got 2 plans because you're in a primitive world. There's not a lot of different ways to get food. I can get the fish or I can get the roots. The probability that 2 individuals will agree on the priority of goals and the plans is pretty high. But what if you're in a world where you have 1,000 goals? What if you're in a world where you have 100 plans for each goal? What's the probability that any 2 people are going to agree on the goal priority order and the plans? No. And if you have a system that feeds that conflict, that friction in a negative way, you get polarization. So, some of you may know this movie. What we have here is a failure to communicate. Yes, that's a big problem. We have a failure to communicate because our species has created a complexity level that's beyond our communication capabilities. And twins are one avenue that I at least believe is going to be our way out of this. So how do we imagine this? Have you ever been on a long flight? Sitting next to somebody who turns out to be really nice. By the end of the flight, you've exchanged life stories. And if they're like in your field, you even probably have started writing a paper together, or you're going to do a project together. And like, where have you been all my life? And there's this real story of this, how this bag got created when the actress said, I hate my handbag. And the designer says, well, I'm a designer, let's fix it. So these long flights are what deep thinking comes in. We have short conversations. And how are we going to have long conversations? Well, as the marginal cost of computing goes to 0, John and my digital twins can have a billion-year conversation, a billion-year conversation. And then we can say, according to these criteria, what are the 3 best conversations we have? And we watch those conversations. And then we show up at this meeting and we have a fantastic conversation because we've explored the space of conversations. And I believe that we have to get the errors out, which is figuring out truth. And truth, mathematical, okay, got that. Computational, okay, got that. Empirical, yes. Science, data, sort of historical and rhetorical truth are where we're struggling. And knowing a better argument when you see it and why, and then having a little humility to admit you're wrong. But no, that's a better argument. And this is what Finland, where you're going soon, they teach this in like kindergarten. You know, stuff like this, knowing a better argument, knowing this information. This is where we're weak. Now, trust is hard to build, easy to destroy. Mental models and predictable behavior. If Jim acts weird, you don't trust him. If he acts predictably, trust him. So predictability is important to this. And we have to have AI digital twins that are responsible actors. And then I think we can get to, if we get truth and trust nailed, then we can get to wisdom, which is learning to invest wisely in a future we all want to live in. And that's why I'm doing this, this research in my retirement. Now, what could possibly go wrong? Everything could go wrong. We could destroy the planet. Unintended consequences. So I also urge people to read this book. I won't go into this, that's another thought. I haven't said much about service science, but artificial intelligence, which I studied in grad school, and is about generations of smarter machines. And a lot of the people doing AI research are motivated by the fact they wanted to solve AI so they could solve all problems. And for the good of humanity. So good motivations, but service science is about generations of people, responsible actors. And people, not just people, but generations of new businesses, generations of new governments, generation of new universities. They're all service systems. They all give, get, and grow service. So this is what I study, is service science and service innovation. And we need to get to a better level of communication. I'm not going to go through these because they're too much, but we do, actually, maybe this one's kind of good. Actually, this one is really good. Joseph, you have those books? Thank you. One of the biggest problems in service science that we've noted is service science is all about finding win-wins. Non-zero sum win-win. These are value propositions. Value propositions are non-coercive. Government mechanisms allow coercion. Pay your taxes or go to jail. Coercion is allowed over here. Now, what if you could design systems with the appropriate technology that have no coercion? I was just at a meeting with a bunch of Japanese on something called shiitake design, and over at Stanford. They came in from Japan for a meeting. And shiitake design is you got 2 wastebaskets. One of them has a basketball hoop over it. Guess which one gets used 10 times more than the one that doesn't. So you modify people's behavior to do the right thing by an incentive in the design structure. You don't have to use coercion. You don't have to have a police standing there looking for litterers because people are doing the right behavior. So I really do think there are some people that have thought about non-coercive systems. This book right here by John Demings is the most readable one I've come across so far. But this is going to be important as well, is designing these systems to avoid coercion and understanding that real world problems. Service science doesn't replace any discipline. It's an integration. It needs all of these disciplines to do this redesign work. I'm going to skip this and end and see if there's any questions, but I'll just say the best way to predict the future is to inspire the next generation of students to build it better. That's my version of the Alan Kay quote. When I was born, when I was conceived in Maine in 1955, that was the phone that was on the wall in our farmhouse. It was made of wood. I was so happy when we got a regular telephone and I got to take this apart and pull all the magnets out. This was the phone that was on my desk at MIT. This was my first cell phone when I got to Silicon Valley. Now, of course, I have my smartphone. What could I have by 2035 or 2055? Lucky enough to make. This was my first program on punch cards. And, you know, when I was at IBM, we gave Watson in about 2011 to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. And now, of course, we're building Gem Twin. And I do think that, and this is just my bio slide, but I do think we need to figure out a better human approach to design that's non-coercive and that doesn't just fall back on the super adaptability that we have, that really keeps us feeling human and keeps us not just feeling human, but deeply thinking about each other, you know, in ways we don't think about each other anymore. You know, how can we have those, you know, what if that airplane flight where you were sitting side by side lasted 1,000,000 years? You know, there's a depth to understanding and relationships that we're losing. And I think that's where I see this exploration, this journey, Gem Twin going. So thank you, and if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them. Any questions?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't
Mike,
fully
that
answer
as
the
well.
quantum entanglement one that Mike Worth asked. The realist. Actually, basically, the scale.
Next to this.
Oh, this thing. Thank you, Mike. So Mike Worth, who's an old friend from IBM, researcher from IBM Research, and physics background and computer science, asked about resyncing. Boy, I wish I had a good answer for that. I don't like the Neuralink kind of stuff. That doesn't really appeal to me, Mike, although that's a possibility. But I do think this resyncing is really, really big. And I do have a few slides. Let me go back to sharing. I'm not sharing now, am I? No, let me go back to sharing. Yes.
For the benefit of the audio recording, if you could restate the question as you said.
Yeah, resyncing. Okay. Okay. So again, it's about speed of communication. So I don't know about you, but I can read much faster than I can talk. And I think if we could get a like and I listen to all my YouTubes at 2x speed, it drives my wife crazy. And I'm sure I could learn to listen at 4x speed if it was allowed on YouTube. And sometimes I've even like something that was really long, I said, okay, I'm gonna do a Zoom and I'm gonna play it off the YouTube at 2x into the Zoom, and then I'm gonna put that up and I'm gonna replay it at 4x. But you know, you have to train your ear. But I think part of the answer on sync up is we just have to get, you know, learning working better. So this is a slide I made after I read Don Norman's book, Things That Make Us Smart. And I think, you know, the more you know, the more languages you know, the easier it is to learn another language. So there are these scale effects that start happening. And the way I think about the world in the sync up, Mike, is everything is a point in a latent space, right? It's like a word is a point in a latent space. A book is a point in a latent space. John is a point. Jim is a point in a latent space. So there's these very high dimensional spaces where everything is a point. And if you look at this guy right here, again, now we're in like research mode. And why do I want to research with people and not just super intelligent AIs? Because this guy right here, where is he? Yes. Stephen Welch of Welch Labs is producing some really, really educationally brilliant stuff about high dimensional spaces. And we've evolved in a three-dimensional space with time, but if, I know this sounds weird, but like, and Mike, you'll like this because it's got a quantum effect. There's theories that birds see in 7 colors. And one of them is magnetic field force lines. And that's why they know how to fly more. Is because, and why do they start at dawn? Because the sunlight hasn't flooded the other senses yet. So early in dawn, they can see, oh, that's the way I gotta go. And so they see the magnetic field as color. And there's another book called by Andrew Young called The Immense World, where he looks at rattlesnakes and how they perceive the world, and all these other creatures, bats and everything, and it's beautifully written, and you realize that and maybe this is back to our adaptability, I guess, but there's a lot more to the world than we're paying attention to. And if we could make the leap into higher dimensional spaces somehow, then it's like that old joke. You've heard the old joke about the comedians? So there's a comedian convention. And there's the new comedian's there, and he's got his buddy comedian, and they're there, and this guy, they're talking, and then he starts noticing people are shouting out random numbers. And so he's like, what's going on? And he goes, well, we've done so many of these, we just have numbers now to encode the joke that we want to tell back. And so the kid is like really excited, and people are laughing every time. Oh, 54! Yeah. And so the kid just figures, that's what I go. 81! Suddenly the room goes completely quiet. And like somebody looks at him and says, maybe you should read. And what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Oh, now tell the joke. So, you're supposed to say the number in a particular way. So my point is that if everything is a point in a very high dimensional space, and we had better education around high dimensional spaces, we might be able to dramatically increase them. Dramatically. And again, if you go out to this Welch video, it's beautiful stuff. He takes all the mathematics of AI. There's one about mapping to low dimensional spaces. So how do you take a high dimensional space and map it to a low dimensional space? There's 3 methods of that, 3 algorithms. And the first algorithm isn't very good for things that are like a intertwined spiral core. But there's this other method, I think it's called UMAP. And somebody's nodding over there like, So UMAP can uncoil coiled spirals and make them linearly separable. And he's also got just beautiful, beautiful videos explaining these high dimensional spaces. So if you want to understand how the AI is computing the answer, because I don't want to say thinking, because it's not thinking, it's computing an answer. It's because of these high dimensional spaces. The very first job I had out of MIT was working at a startup AI company, and we were building mathematical models of speech and language. And our speech data, we sent out a letter, mail, physical paper mail, to our relatives and friends saying, please dial this 800 number and read these numbers in. Now the whisper system has 26 million hours of speech to train it up. We have just a 300 megabyte disk. And we thought we were in big time when we got our AP newswire coming in, so we could get the text of the news every day. And oh, guess what we were going to do? We were going to try to generate the news stories for tomorrow from the histories. So we were doing generative AI back then, but we were doing it with trigrams and 8-bit machines, and we knew we don't have enough data, we don't have enough compute, and we could envision these algorithms. The one algorithm I wish we'd had was word to vec. We did not have word to vec. Boy, if we had had word to vec, we would have gone a little further, a little bit further. But, you know, I gotta believe there's something about these high dimensional representations that is gonna be really important for this sync up night. And I do want to sync up. I don't want to just have my AI twin, you know, having all the fun. It would be nice if it's had these conversations. It has to map it to a lower dimensional space. Just like, you know, if it's had a billion conversations, well, show me the three best. That's better than nothing. So sample the three that if I watch them close together, I don't know about you, but I read a lot of books. And now that I'm in retirement, I like to read at least 2 books in parallel. Why? Because I'll read a little bit of this and then I'll read a little bit of this and there'll be a creative connection that comes out of it. That wouldn't happen if I do one linear one. So I gotta believe there's like a lot we don't understand about our minds, our thinking. And certainly these high dimensional computing systems. So it's a great time for these youngsters to go out and start their startup companies. You know, get on with it. And I think if we can inspire them to build it better, maybe it'll be good. I don't know. Anyway, any other questions?
We have twins, of course, you're gonna have quadruplets and sex stuff.
Yeah, why not?
What about when you have 100,000 agents, 10,000 gyms
Yeah.
and 10,000 Joes, and so our twins, behind each twin is 100,000 agents. And then they're talking to each other. And at the speed that they can interact.
Yeah.
But it still boils down to maybe the Jim twin and the Joe twin. But what's going on there? I mean,
Well,
are we getting away from humanness at that point?
Well, here's how I would approach it. Good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but here's how I'd approach it. There's Jim, the guy that worked at Apple. There's Jim, the guy that worked at IBM. There's Jim, retired Jim. There's Jim, family man Jim, who does this with his family. There's Jim, you know, all the different service systems I've been part of and that I am part of are potential different Jim twins. And I might want to have privacy barriers so that certain information doesn't flow about whatever to whatever. And I think that's one of the biggest objections. No, I don't want a twin because how would I build that privacy in? But I do think that it's this Mike Worth's question of how do we sync up? You know, and I think the sync up has got to be initially a summarization. There's this vast space, and I'm just going to summarize it for you, Jim, because you know, you've only got a little bit of time. Maybe it could write a book for me about what it found. But what is the purpose? You know, why do we do this? You know, is it just communication for what end? And this is where I think this wisdom stuff comes in, is learning to invest wisely in becoming better future versions of ourselves. Just about every service system in the world, let's say Stanford as a service system, it wants to be a better Stanford a year from now. It doesn't want to be an inferior, it doesn't want to be going down, it wants to be going up. So if, at least in service science, we have come up with some frameworks for systematically investing to improve a system over time, make it more resilient. Now there's this other view, you know, and I actually, one of the things I disagree with Deming in that book is he talks too much about survival. For the purposes of survival, for the purpose of survival. I don't believe that. I mean, I do as our species evolved. But now we're volitional, as he calls it, we're a volitional species. And if we're a volitional species and not just like following our instincts, then I think we have this opportunity to be, some would say explorers. That's why I do like the blueprint for a spacefaring civilization, which is in the title, because that's a big challenge. However, machines are going to be much better at exploring space than we are. So maybe I remember I was taking a hike with my younger son, Steven, and we were talking about he had just finished up his project at NASA, where he was studying Pluto with Dale Cruikshank, who's the world expert on Pluto, and they had just done the flyby. And I was trying to think of something fun to say to Stephen, and I said, that's gonna be pretty cool, you know, you're modeling these ice flows, it's gonna be pretty cool when you're actually walking on those ice flows. What are you talking about, Dad? We're not gonna, in my lifetime, we're not gonna have people walking on Pluto, and why would I be walking on Pluto? I said, no, it's your lifetime, you're gonna have a telerobot, and the telerobot, you're gonna be in it, driving the telerobot, and you're gonna be walking on Pluto in your lifetime. And he says, what? And I said, yeah, that's how it'll work, and it'll probably have a quantum communication system, so you'll be in real-time contact with your robot, and you know, you'll be just exploring these ice flows, you'll be maybe gathering some samples, I don't know. And you know, that's why I say the best way to predict the future is to inspire the next generation to build it better. And I think their imagination, once we get to this higher dimensional ways of looking at things, I think we're going to be able to, you know, be fantastic explorers. And yeah, read the book. As I know you have.
There's the inner world too,
Yes.
right? The whole psychedelics and everything, and it may be that we go in,
Absolutely.
you know, and you know, in maybe infinite. But anyway, but that's if we volitionally can steer AI too, right?
Yeah.
We want,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
when you have millions of agents who are communicating to each other, you know, we want to be able to
Yeah.
shape AI, hopefully.
I totally agree with you. Did you meet Karen when he was here? Karen Sinani? Anyway, he built the award-winning app called World Around Me and downloaded it. It's Google app, World Around Me, it's augmented realities. And so he was studying service science at Ivy Research. And you know, he got to a point, he moved to Berlin, and he said, you know, the app is running itself now, so I'm going to do something else. And he started getting into art and music, yoga, and I said, you're not doing Wham anymore, world around me, you're doing Whim, world inside me. And I said, absolutely. And he said, I'm so much happier doing Whim than I was doing Wham. So I agree with you, Joseph. I think the you know, it's kind of like we gotta be kinder and more caring and less knavishness and coercion. Right, and for those who don't know the word knavishness, it's a mischievous kind of causing chaos that some people seem to like to do.
This is a refreshing talk because I think AI just leaves you all the time. You're just thinking AI is just gonna zoom away from us and diminish our humanity or take away meaning,
Yeah.
right? Purpose and these things. Anyway, so this is refreshing.
I think it'll help us explore morality and
Well, absolutely. No, the positives are you can just keep talking about the positives.
if we can develop it not as HCI, but HHI.
Right.
If we can really start having deep understanding and communication with each other.
Yeah.
Then we're on, I think, a more wisdom track. If it's just like everybody talking, you know, everybody's looking at their smartphone talking, hey God AI, what should I wear today? You know, no. Hey Judy, what are you wearing today? Okay, I'm good. You know, it's people talking to people. And understanding them deeply, and you know, that's where I think we've lost it.
Yeah.
You know, and you can have a really good life today. I mean, there's no shortage of all kinds of good stuff. But if it's not deeply meaningful, in some sense, you're going to wake up someday, or you'll have, as my grandmother would say, you know, be grateful for every hardship, Jimmy. Because that's what's gonna get your character. You know, thanks, Gran. And she's right, though. You know, it's not about an easy life. It's about, you know, facing the challenges and growing. Any mother and father raising a kid knows you try to keep the kid in the Vygotsky zone of proximal development, where the challenges are increasing. You know, and good managers at Apple and IBM, that's what we did, is we kept our employees in the Vygotsky zone of proximal development. So once in a while you meet somebody who says, I'm happy just doing this job and never want to do anything else. And if they're super good at it, you say, leave that person alone. They're the best in the world and we don't want to challenge them. We just want them to do that job super well. But yeah, I agree with you, Joseph. It's an exciting time. It really is. And I do think, I love, the thing I get out of these sessions is good questions. So thank you, Joseph. That's, and Mike, thank you for sticking on.
There've been a bunch of other questions
Oh,
in the chat.
Oh, wow.
Comments following up on
Okay.
Michael's.
I think dimensionality reduction is important. Well, Pichao, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I can send you some great YouTubes on dimensionality reduction. Sparse distributed memory, mapping high dimensional. Physical trends reminds me of Kiln People by David Brin. On the top of my bookshelf. It's a kind of dark book, I think, but it's good.
Mike Travers had an interesting
Oh, Mike, whoa, somebody.
an economic issue right there.
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Oh, let me stop sharing so I can see people here. Oh my God.
Love that you're double.
Hi. What is twin?
Oh, you've got a twin.
Hey, Mike, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Oh, what's up?
Well, I was wondering about the economic aspect of digital twins, which the sort of the maybe the non-utopian, because or AI in general threatens to replace a lot of people's jobs for better or worse. It's going to cause a lot of disruption, and I think the way the digital twins, as you've been talking about them, they're something that you make for yourself, and they enhance your abilities, and that's all good. But in the real world, people are making twins of employees so they can get rid of the employees. So what I think as an industry, we kind of have to address the economic disruption that all this stuff is going to cause. I wondered if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, if somebody has lost their job, it's not a perfectly happy time, right? Because there's uncertainty and it is a hard thing when one loses one's job. So I don't want to give a glib answer here, like, oh, we'll just be super happy. So thank you for asking this hard question. I do believe, oh, how do I find that? No, that's the wrong button. Oh, there it is. I got unmuted somehow. Boy, that twin of me is such knavishness. I would say there's some slides in some of my deck that show there's 10-year cycles where upskilling occurs over these 10-year cycles. So you definitely we need to get into a new mode. I don't think it's going to be, it's going to be some variation of, oh, what is it called? That guaranteed income thing?
UBI.
Yeah.
UBI, yeah.
It's going to be some version of that, probably, but it's not going to be exactly that, because I think, okay, so I showed you that slide with the influencers that I follow.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be platforms where the distinction between customer and employee vanishes. And in the future, what does an employee do? It helps the platform be successful. What does a customer do? It helps the platform be successful. What does the platform do? Well, there's going to be lots of platforms, and I think the platforms that are going to help with employment are going to be the ones that and I got some old presentations on this, Mike, that I'm trying to remember, but there's things like take eBay. Take eBay. What if you had a humanoid robot that was selling all your junk on eBay? Okay, that's selling your junk. What if you had So basically, I think it's gonna go towards entrepreneurship, because there's plenty of capital. Basically, using your labor, it's gonna look kind of silly in the future. You're gonna be using your resources, but you're gonna be investing in things like, in my last book, I talked about this problem of like, you have to start thinking about investment at a younger and younger age these days. Every week you should be taking at least 20% of what you've earned and investing it in an index fund, if you're conservative like me, or as my wife likes to say, I prefer investing in the workhorses like NVIDIA. But the point is, there's plenty of capital. And if we design a culture based on truth, trust, and wisdom, then people will be exploring on platforms, and it's kind of, you look for role models. Like I looked at Alan Kay, I know you did too, Mike, as a potential role model.
Sure.
So we look at people who are successful and say, I want to be like them. How are they successful? And so there's no like simple answer like the eBay robot, but I'll give you another one. For most of human history, energy was local. What do I mean by that? Well, 200 years ago, energy was local. People were burning wood or using animals that they would feed grass or water to turn wheels. Guess what? We're going to get energy local again. I think ultimately through geothermal, there'll be local energy everywhere, abundant local energy. And then if you have a robot that can do I remember my grandfather telling me, I said, "You're a farmer, granddad?" And he goes, "No, I'm a mechanic." Because what do farmers do is just spend their time repairing their equipment. And he had a sawmill for making shingles and wood, and it was really cool to play with all the farm equipment that he was constantly repairing. But think of a farmer as a biological entrepreneur, and if they got local energy, and you could see the family farm come back. You could see, there's so many possibilities that I can't even begin to enumerate them all. And we just need to inspire this next generation to go out there and do some of these things, and then other people can start following them. Our generation had it easy. It was like, get a good education, go to a good school, go to work for a good company. That's what I did. Apple and IBM. And the startup company that we did in the 70s got acquired by Exxon. I've sold all my Exxon stock. But that was an easier day. And I don't want to minimize somebody's just lost their job, or somebody's just graduated and they're struggling to find a job. I know a lot of the IT types that are graduating these days are going into real estate because they can't find jobs in IT. If they can find a job in IT, it's like being a data center security guy. And that's they're happy with those jobs, but you got to invest, and there's plenty of capital for entrepreneurs, and with AI, there's never been an easier time to do a startup company. There's never been a harder time to make your company differentiated and successful. But there's plenty of capital, and you don't have to be the entrepreneur that founds the company. If you've just been laid off from a job, and it's a good company, I'm sure you have great skills, and there's a startup out there that's going, how are we going to get the person to do this who understands AI? Because that's the key. You can't just be, we're all service providers. That's what service science is about. We're all service providers. But AI will not replace a service provider. But a service provider who uses AI well will replace the service provider who does not use AI. That's for sure in the economy. I can't think of any exceptions to that. But you know, here's another startup. I mean, you got an aging population. I don't know how many elderly people confide in me, because I guess I'm old enough that they feel like they can talk to me. I don't want to go to a retirement home, Jim. I want to live in my own house, but I can't, you know, I'm having trouble going shopping and I'm having trouble doing this. So I think there's huge opportunities in the caring economy. I know there is for the aging demographic. So I think the opportunities are abundant, but it's not easy when I was doing this job and I just got laid off, or I'm this student, I just graduated and now what do I do? I mean, that's your life. What do I do? But the main thing is not to get stuck. And I would say, I have a book for everything, by the way. That's how my brain is built. And I just read books and I say, oh, a question, this is the book. And so let me share this, and we probably should wrap up, but we're way past my bedtime. Let's see here. Oops. Yeah, this is a great book, by the way. All the books I recommend are great books. And this is a book that Joseph has is just fantastic. What did I do? Here we go. Okay, so if we go back to the presentation just briefly. Here we go. I got to speak this. Here we go. Almost there. Gotta just reduce this. Okay, now I can get this. Okay, so this row of books here is fantastic, but this one right here, the 2-buck rule in 2024 by John Walford, who was a colleague of mine at IBM. And by the way, he's got, I think, 3 digital twin companies. Yeah, yeah, because he's big into, there's all these win-wins out there, but it's like a poker game. I can't show you my card because you might steal it. I can't show you. So he's building these totally secure. You can have your twins go in and negotiate, and you just see some summary information about how much money you're both going to make before any information is disclosed the other way. So that's one side. But this book, the 2-buck rule, is how never to be stuck in life.
2-buck rule.
The 2-buck rule. I know. And he's got a lot of butt jokes in it too, so you have to put up with those. I think they're funny. He sent it to me and said, "You think this book is good?" And I laughed the whole way through, but I've got a 4th grader sense of humor. But no, it's a good book because it teaches you not to get stuck. And Mike, I think the answer to the question of economics is it's there. We just need people to go out and explore, and you got to be an entrepreneur, and you got to know capital. You got to start investing if you're not investing. And you know, there's a Google talk, not Jim Collins. It's called the Secret Path to Wealth or something like that, which talks about investing, and that's really key. But this 2-buck rule is, you're in a meeting and somebody comes up with an idea. I think there should be humanoid robots that like package up your garage for eBay and generate money. And maybe after it packages up your garage, you go over to the elderly person next door and you say, "Oh, package up yourself and sell it on eBay for 10% commission, 15% commission." Okay, and then you got your humanoid robot going over there. So anyway, that's like a crazy idea. But that's stupid because we don't have humanoid robots, Jim. Well, the 2-buck rule is you have to challenge yourself to say, but, you know, and then you got to come up with an answer. But if we did have humanoid robots, or if I could think of something that a current robot system could do, I could just mark that. And so you always want to have an even number of butts. And he's got an AI that will help you do the 2-buck rule on anything. So if you can't think of the second butt, your AI friend will help you do that. But I you know, I'm lucky, I got to do it the easy way, go to good schools, get a good job, invest, retire. But not everybody has that luxury. And I don't know what to say other than what Granny said. Be grateful for your challenges, because they'll make you a better person. No, I don't know, Mike, that's the best I got.
No, well, thanks, Jim. I mean, I just have to say, I'm not so worried about my own job prospects. But I just see a lot of social disruption being caused by this technology, and just wondering how as a society we're gonna
What do you
cope with
think
that.
about universal basic income? Are you pro that, or that seems to be the
I
thing?
well, I think I think that's a good idea. Having it actually, having it actually happen is another question. I don't want to get don't want to get too political here. I just wanted to kind of raise the issue, but we're not going to solve those problems here. But yeah,
I
some
mean,
kind of UBI would be a good idea.
yeah, take Norway. I mean, they've got a sovereign fund, right? That, you know, every single person in Norway has more than enough for a good life, right? And, you know, there's a lot of different approaches to this. I personally, because I like service, I wish we had a mandatory period of service in the United States where, you know, if you're like 16 years old and you don't want to finish, you can get your high school equivalent. You could go out and just be an apprentice to, you know, at a hospital or anything you want, and just learn on the job and serve your community and do it that way. Or, I think part of the problem is 200 years ago, if you were growing up on a farm, you'd watch your parents and learn how to do everything. Well, guess what kids watch their parents do today? Working at home. It's like, oh, they're on their computer. I should be on my computer. They're playing games. They're doing work. What's the difference? No, I think it's there's so many different ways that the future could evolve. And if you read this book, it's really inspiring how many ideas are in that one book. And Samuel Arbesman, in his book, The Magic of Code, he's got a whole set of ideas about how humanity could go off and do these things. And he makes his money in various ways, but writing books, for example, that are really well written. How do you tell if you've got a really well written book? My criteria is if every 5 pages I'm learning a new vocabulary word, it's a good book. And like Samuel Arbesman, I've got the dictionary and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a good word. But seriously, I think, thank you for coming out and just hearing me blather. This was fun for me.
So we have time. I have
Yes.
questions. So the first one is probably a deep discussion that could take hours. And you mentioned this many times, humane.
Yes.
So what is that? Like, what is
Right. Yeah, exactly.
right? Multiple layers.
I don't know.
Also seem to shift over time. When people have their pets, but eat a great steak at home, like. It's a question. So how does it play in this whole thing? What does humane mean? How do we articulate that explicitly? And do we have a common ground of it? It's a huge discussion in my opinion.
Yeah.
The other thing is, not really related to this, but how do we capture the tacit knowledge that people have? And then put it into the digital,
Yeah.
replica or
Yeah, that's
whatever.
great.
And that's majority of the good stuff is in the tacit knowledge, not necessarily in articulated or explicit knowledge.
Yeah.
So then how do we capture it so your digital, replica or whatever is not just your academic sort of like enclosure that goes beyond that.
Well, and knowledge management to organizations is kind of like the tacit knowledge in organizations. And there is an organization, APTC, that's got all kinds of surveys and books and stuff on that are being updated in terms of the AI knowledge management, the AI your tacit knowledge, and AI your, I haven't had a chance to read those. But to the first point of what is human and what is humane, that's something I look at a lot in these books I read. Oops, let me go back here. There we go. Close these windows. Go back here. So again, too many books, but you know, this is Don Norman's Design for a Better World, and I remember when he sent me that book and said, "Hey, Jim, read this book and give me some comments." I read it and I said, wow, the big idea here is you're going from human-centered design to humanity-centered design by taking a systems approach. And so I think there's a lot of good exploration of humanity versus.
I actually have a problem with it.
Oh, okay.
Because they immediately defines as humans are the center of the nature. And
Yes, yes.
it's totally like,
That was the feedback I gave you. Oh, what about speech?
like, what about nature-centered
Yeah.
design, right? And human is, has to be one element of that.
Yeah. Well, you've got to read this book, first of all, because in this book, there's basically two things. There's property and there's a non-coercive exchange. And property includes your body. That's the primary property, but it's also got parts in there about nature. So look in there about how you deal with nature. And
you talk about harm, but everything causes harms. So maybe the idea is to, asymptotically approach.
yes.
The Buddhists, they talk about it, they don't want to harm an ant, but
Yeah.
we,
Yeah, there's practical matters, but I think
you could move in that direction.
There's a book, Super Intelligence, that's not in my list here because I literally threw it at the ground several times while I was reading it because I so violently objected to a few of the terms used. I love the book overall, but a few of the things he said, it was just like, But I think in Super Intelligence, the next to the last chapter is about how AI may help us become super ethical. And there's some very, very interesting stuff in that chapter that touches on this nature thing. The other one I would suggest is this book right here, Humankind, A Hopeful History by Rutger Bregman. And he's really trying to inspire the next generation with what he calls ambitious something or other. I haven't read his latest book, but this one is really, really good at exploding the myths of past thoughts on what it means to be human and to be part of our species. And there's some really good stuff in there. I could go on and on and on. This one, Non-Zero, The Logic of Human Destiny, talks about humans as well. And Robert Wright makes the case that this is the win-win stuff. This book helped inspire service science, our look at win-win value propositions. And I'm just trying to think of, in this book, he looks at the whole of evolution. That one slide I skipped over where you go from the Big Bang all the way through everything. He takes that kind of view of this. And it's fascinating to that book is a nice follow-on to this book because, well, how do you get to all the win-wins? This one explains it. And to get to win-win, you have to do it non-coercively. And that's really cool. But all I know is the future is shopping. And this is the book I read. One of the first talks I ever gave was my high school valedictorian speech. And I based it on future shock. And I said to my fellow high school students, we're going into a pretty shocking future. And accelerated change, where many of us grew up on farms that our parents and our grandparents and our grandparents worked on. That's not going to be our lives. Very few. And now I go back to my hometown and I see the farms grown up as forests because they got abandoned. And one of my old scoutmaster was saying, I can't even buy milk that's local anymore. No, there's no dairy cows in the whole of Newburgh.
The word community is a big word.
Yeah. But I tell them, it's coming back, we're gonna get geothermal, we're gonna get humanoid robots, it's coming back, hang on. Cause I think that was a great, I mean, gosh, the way I grew up, I've been so lucky, oh my gosh.
Where did you grow up?
Newburgh, Maine, on an apple orchard farm. And I remember asking my dad, I want a telescope, I wanna look at this thing, he says, well. What kind of telescope do you want? How much is it gonna cost? I said, oh, there's this one, I think it's $150. He goes, "Okay, that's 7 new apple trees, go up and plant them." Plant 7 apple trees, I got my telescope. But yeah, he was a biological entrepreneur, everything was in terms of apple trees. But feeding the pigs, yeah, did that. So I like to say, I grew up on a farm in Maine that was 50 years in the past. Now I live in Silicon Valley, which is like 50 years in the future. So even though I'm only about 70 years old, I've lived about 170 years of journey. And on that note, it's bedtime.
All right, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you, bye. Nice to see so many faces I haven't